Today, our guest is Stephanie Mann. Stephanie is the executive director and the founder of an organization called Safe Kids Now, which has gone nationwide and is expanding. Stephanie is not limited to that organization. She has been a pioneer in safe neighborhoods, Neighborhood Watch, and many other community functions. Please welcome Stephanie Mann.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm delighted to interview you today. I'm interested and excited about letting people know just what it is that you do.
Well, I guess the best place to start is at the beginning, maybe how I got started. And I got started in my own community, and that's a community of 17,000 people. We had a crime wave, about 400 burglaries. I think it was 398 or something. And we had no local police department. So our volunteer committee took a look at the problem and said, oh my gosh, we got to do something here. Of course, most of the men said, what we need are more police. What the women said was, what we need were safer neighborhoods. So we had more influence just because we didn't have any money. And we did hire one police officer to work with us because we only had 1.5 police officers for 17,000 citizens.
A little unrealistic. This is why the police can only take the records. They can't stop the crime.
Exactly. And it's citizens that do stop the crime. So to make a long story short, it took us 2.5 years talking to our neighbors, getting organized, and we reduced our own crime problem 48%, which was unheard of at that time because this was back in about 1972 that we were able to accomplish that. And the crime was really high at that time for everybody. And we went on, because we had so much publicity, people and police departments were calling us because they just started a program called Neighborhood Watch, and they weren't sure how to get it off the ground. So Nancy Reagan helped us and we worked with the California Youth Authority, and we published this little book called Alternative to Fear, Guidelines for Safer Neighborhoods. We sold thousands of these little books, and all over the country, including the FBI. They even did a seminar at the FBI. So we kind of got launched that way, and it also really supported the Neighborhood Watch concept.
Please hold that book up again. The light bounced off of the top so that you couldn't really read the title. There, now we can see it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
That's good.
Well, that's how we got started. That's how I got started.
You're the author of several books now.
Yes. I became a coordinator for our county when we organized, and this was a citizens crime prevention committee for Contra Costa County. We had a lot of opposition from the police because they kept saying we were going to be vigilantes. And we're saying, no, that's not what we're working on. We're working on getting neighbors connected. And they liked the concept, but they didn't like citizens doing it. So we had a struggle getting the grant for that, but we worked for 6 years, organized 27 committees in Contra Costa County, and these were citizen crime prevention committees in all kinds of different cities, whether they were in high crime neighborhoods, crime cities, or whether they were in suburban neighborhoods. And we did that all with 6 coordinators. So after that, that's when I published this book. See if you can see this one.
Oh, yes, that's good. We can see that good.
Safe Home, Safe
That book is in police stations across the nation.
Yes, and it's been out there for a long time, and you know, all of us have the ability to take charge of our neighborhood safety and make it safe for the kids, and that's why we wrote it. I wrote this book with Mary Claire Blakeman, and Alternative to Fear, I wrote it with Shirley Hankey. So I've had wonderful support in the years I've been working.
Well, your work has proven, so people want to get involved because it's proven itself over and over again.
Well, nobody likes anything better than success. And we saw so many neighborhoods that were able to start turning their communities around because the neighborhoods got connected and people got to know each other, and they got fed up with the crime rate. For example, in El Sobrante, California, I walked into that community as a coordinator, not knowing one person, and I went through different businesses, found out who, and that was unincorporated, just like we were. And I found out who were the movers and shakers in the community, and we put a meeting together. We started making progress, and in, I guess, 2 years it took us. We had 300 people at a meeting to celebrate all the accomplishments of the El Sobrante Crime Prevention Committee. And Jane Beam Wood was recognized. She was the leader over there that we found, and she was recognized by the state of California for the work she did in El Sobrante.
You want a bit of recognition yourself.
Well, yes, but one of the roles I've played for many years is a kind of a background. I'm kind of a educate people and help them to help themselves, because a lot of people don't have the faintest idea what to do, and that's why I wrote the books. I worked for the Oakland Police Department at one time as a consultant, and one day I came out of the police department and found that the homeless people that I'd gotten to know in Oakland, California, they all got up when I was talking to them and started walking away. And I said, "Where are you guys going?" And they said, "We're going over to get some food at Mary Ann Wright's." So much to my surprise, and I followed them. And I thought, okay, I'm going to meet this lady. She's
bet.
All these homeless people, 300 people she was feeding. And so I worked with her for years. We had drug addicts. We had, oh my goodness, the homeless are, and amazingly, some of them were educated people that were living out of their cars. Some of them were students. But I had a young man stop and talk to me one day, and he said, "Can you help me?" And I thought he was going to ask me for money, but he didn't. He said, "I just got out of San Quentin." It took me several weeks to learn all this, but I found out he came out of San Quentin prison, and he wanted to change his life, but he didn't have a clue what to do or how to do it. So as a result, he wanted to work with me, and then he talked to some of the men in the park, and they wanted to work with us. And I finally said, "You know what? I think we need a meeting place." There was a church called New St. Paul's Baptist Church, and we went over, and that's when we put a group together. So that's how I wrote this book. So I thought I'd show you this one. And that's
That's a remarkable book. You were such an inspiration that there were many people in your area that started to work in the programs that you were teaching, weren't there?
Yes. It's amazing. If you give people a little bit of information and you're there to support them and encourage them, Americans are amazing. They will do things, and the reason they won't do things is if they're allowed to stay in fear. Fear just immobilizes people and makes them back off. So that was the whole impetus of what we were doing, was getting people out of being fearful and give them hope.
Well, what people don't realize is that the eyes of the citizen go wherever the citizen goes, and they have more power than they ever realized they had, which is why you were so inspirational and inspired so many, including me.
Oh, well, thank you, Rebecca. But you're an inspirational person yourself. My goodness, you've done so much you're a real survivor, and survivors are one of the things that I'm attracted to, because so many people have so much potential and they don't even know it. You discovered your potential, and that's what I was seeking. People that have potential, and then give them the information they need to find their own way and grow from the grassroots up.
You touched many people with potential. As a matter of fact, your inspiration is what caused me to implicate your program, bring it forth, and activate it in Northern California. And today in Northern California, you have representatives for Safe Kids Now. You have a Northern California representative, a board member, myself, and you also have Safe Kids Now members scattered across the United States and in other countries. You, Stephanie, have inspired many, many people and changed many lives.
Well, thank you very much. I think all of us have the potential to inspire each other, and I think that's part of the mission for every human being is to help each other out so that we reach our potential.
Currently, you have a radio show in Oakland.
Buildcommunity.us.
Wonderful. And this is on More Public Radio?
Morepublicradiointernational.org. And it reaches all the way around the world. And our latest member of our network, our Safe Kids Now network, is a young man in Nepal. And I haven't even got him up on the website yet. I sent him some books, and he is a youth leader, and he's putting together a conference. So he wanted to know how to get organized. So I'm sending him information, and I'm saying, hey, we did it. You can do it too.
Okay, tell our listening audience one more time the name of the radio station and the contact.
The radio station is called More, M-O-R-E, publicradiointernational.org, and it's in Oakland, California. And anybody can look us up on www.buildcommunity.us. They can also listen to our recordings, our previous broadcasts, of which I have 2 on there about Rebecca Kimbel. And the first recording that I did of you, Rebecca, was on your personal history, your personal story, which is an amazing story. And the second one had to do with behavior, the narcissistic behavior, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity or anything else. It's narcissism. You could say it better than I can. How men, particularly with big egos, are really controlling a lot of society, women and children. So that's a very interesting interview.
Thank you. You were a speaker in Washington, D.C. Will you tell us about that?
Yes, I'd love to. I was invited by the Women's Federation for World Peace, and that goes back last year. And to New York City, they had a large conference, and what they wanted to talk about was actually this little book, which is called the Adopt-A-Block Guidebook. For example, in our inner cities, which you know we've got a lot of problems with our inner cities. 9 young people a day are murdered across the United States of America. We have hundreds of thousands of people that are shot, just shot, wounded. We don't talk about that as much as we do about the murders, but there are 98,000 that are wounded every year, which is shocking, The violence we have in this country is absolutely unacceptable. So I wrote the Adopt-A-Block Guidebook because there are, for example, in Oakland, California, there are 463 churches. I'll say that again. There are 463 churches. The tenets of the church is about love thy neighbor, but people have become so fearful that they don't even know their neighbor. They're afraid to connect.
That's true.
This is an easy book. Anybody can take it and know the do's and don'ts of what to do, how to do it, how to do a survey, questions to ask. And that's what we talked about in New York. And we got a lot of people very excited about going out and actually helping neighbors connect. And the reason I mention the churches, and it doesn't have to be just churches, it could be synagogues, it could be recreation centers, Any group already knows and trusts the people that are in the group. And then you're 10 steps ahead
Yeah,
because
because you already have a group that's formed that is cohesive.
exactly. So then you just take a few people from that group and say, okay, let's go door to door and do a survey and see what are the needs of our neighborhood around this church. Just take on one block and don't just preach to people or ask questions and forget it. We got to help people connect, actually get to know each other because there's a huge, huge benefit. Mentors, there are all kinds of mentors in neighborhoods. There's a check and balance on behavior in neighborhoods when neighbors know each other.
People
So
don't realize that the greatest number of crimes are prevented by people looking out for each other.
absolutely, if people are dependent on the police, it's not going to happen because people do not commit crimes while a policeman's standing there. It's people being observant that
I think you hit the nail on the head. Is when somebody's watching. That's the key. If your neighborhood is watching, you would prefer not being seen, so you don't do it.
exactly. And as a matter of fact, when people are out and about, we need to become more aware of what's going on around us so that we know the cars in the neighborhood, the kids in the neighborhood, and that's how you prevent crime. And then also exchanging contact information.
When the neighborhood starts watching out for each other, when friends start watching out for friends, when people start caring about each other, they will not tolerate the nonsense. Isn't it true that most of the crimes are committed by our own children?
Well, we found that true. I found that true in every single community. Usually more than half of it is created. And I don't care what community you're in, whether it's a suburban community or whether it's a high crime neighborhood. Yes, the percentage goes up in a high crime neighborhood of youth that belong to gangs and so forth. But generally, our kids are sending a very direct message to us as adults that we need to be more responsible. The kids don't have any guidance, and that's why they join gangs or that's why they perpetrate crimes. Or they've been victims themselves.
Well, also, we have a system where the parents will cover up the crime of the child because they're afraid of being ostracized or punished by the neighbors themselves. In other words, if they tell, then they blame the entire family. It's sort of like when the Catholic priests got in trouble, they blamed the whole Catholicism. So Catholicism wouldn't do anything with their priests except transfer them because they didn't want the blame. So they actually were perpetuating it by covering it because of the fear of being culpable.
Well, I think this is one of the myths because all children do naughty things. And they
Right.
start when they're little, and it is up to parents to correct the behavior. And then as they grow older, they can still do naughty things and make some really bad choices. And this is where the community is extremely helpful to parents. I really need a support system for my kids. I have 3 children and 7 grandchildren. And my children had a lot of support system. They belong to a swim club. They belong to a church. They belong to a neighborhood group and had a lot of interaction in neighborhoods. We had an extended family. So there were a lot of check and balances on my children, and they supply that same check and balance for their own children, which is essential to raising kids. You cannot do it alone, and they will make mistakes. And when somebody says, your child stole something out of my garage or they bullied my child, you say, thank you very much. I really needed to know that. And then you need to be on top of it right away.
Neighbors need to realize that in some cases the child is being raised by a single parent and that parent needs a little help.
Absolutely. I think all parents need help, and especially a single mother. We had one woman that in one neighborhood in El Sobrani, the 2 boys were really acting up, stealing out of the garages, smashing mailboxes, potted plants, and they were like 7 and 9 years old. Now these kids were headed down a very disturbing road. Well, one man at a neighborhood meeting, they started talking about what was going on in the neighborhood, and he said, I told this mother, blah, blah, blah. And she slammed the door in his face because he didn't handle it very well.
You don't need to know how to reach out in a helpful way because she was getting the condemnation she was afraid of. So the communication was blocked right there.
That's right. It was stopped dead. And so in the group, they picked up, they decided to have two of the men that were, and I think there was a woman in there too. Anyway, they went to see her in a very pleasant way and say, we're here to help. We're not here to reprimand your kids. We just know there's something going on with these boys. And as a result of that meeting, she burst into tears and said her husband had left her, the boys were out of control. Well, everybody in the neighborhood became mentors for these boys. And the last time I saw her, one of the boys was in college and one was doing well in high school. And who knows what would have happened if those neighbors hadn't taken those children under their wing. So there's good things.
Yeah. Because I know you, I know this is just one of many, many stories
That's true.
You have helped to create and turn into a reality. Is it any wonder that your program has gone nationwide and is growing?
Well, I don't call it my program. I think there are a lot of wonderful people doing a lot of great things in our communities. There are so many people with different programs and different ideas that are really making a very big difference. So I would just suggest to anybody that would like to help their own community to go out and seek the peacemakers in their own community and find out what they're doing and get in touch with them and let them become mentors to you, because that's how I got started. I've had wonderful mentors.
I acknowledge the fact, because I've seen it, that you as an individual and as an organization of Safe Kids Now and in the Community Watch, everything that you have done has reached out, embraced, and pulled in any and all organizations that were willing to organize for a better community, a better life, and a better tomorrow. You have eliminated no organization. So yes, it's not your organization, but it is the glorious incentive that has come from the books that you've written about how to form organizations and how to get together as a community and how to protect and care about each other and be responsible.
Well, that's the key. I think there are two major issues that have to be addressed in this country at this point right now in the year 2012. Number one, I think we need a spiritual awakening, and I'm not talking about churches, or I'm talking about people finding their own strong spirit within themselves. And matter of fact, I have I'll see if you can see this. This is the diagram that I have in the Safe Kids Now.
Yeah, I can see that.
The Street Safe Kids book. And this is the one in the middle is the spiritually centered child. And that's what all of us need to work on and help kids become centered themselves. The blue is the pincushion child, the one that's a victim, the one that's very sensitive. And I call that child the Michael Jackson child, because that's a very sensitive child that is very vulnerable to child abuse. And Michael Jackson was terribly abused as a child, as he made it very clear he was abused as a child. And then the other is a bully, the red, and that's the child that actually has a lot of problems too, and seeks out the child in the blue because they will tolerate and get upset, and it'll make the bully feel more powerful. So it's our job as parents to teach our children how to be spiritually strong within themselves. And that's the spiritually centered child, because they are protected.
That's a very nice diagram. There's a psychological imbalance whether a child is a bully or a bullier. The balance comes from the self-confidence, the child has, but they can't be self-confident if we don't give them the safety to be self-confident in.
Yes, and unfortunately, we'd have today 1 in 4 children are now growing up with a mother or father being abused in the home, which is a very sad statistic. If the mother is being abused by the father, guess what? They're going to be attracted to another abuser. And we've got plenty of statistics that go along with saying dating violence is a growing problem.
We have really steep statistics about that. Most of the public assumes that domestic violence is a woman's issue. It is not. The children are affected tremendously growing up in domestic violence. It's an issue that's destructive to everyone in the family, including the person that's doing it.
Absolutely. And you know, a lot of children, they may have been victims. I think the pincushion child, the child that I showed you in blue, is your potential rapist, is your potential one that tries to shoot up the school or did shoot up the school. You may remember the incident in way back when, Klebold and Harris, that sort of started that horrible trend and now we have anti-bully policies in our schools. But those are your children that look like, you know, this never bothered them, but they're just like a pot of steam. At some point, they can just blow up, and they don't care about their own lives anymore, but they take it out on the community, they take it out on other people, and it's a very dangerous thing, our off-centered kids, and we have to work a lot harder to make sure they become spiritually centered.
You have been a crime consultant for many years, haven't you, Stephanie?
Going on 36 years.
That's been a tremendous help to teach them to understand which personalities do which kind of things. People imagine that they can call the police and the police can do actually everything. The reality is the police can only take records and reports that finally may or may not end up in court. The neighbors must watch out for themselves if they will organize, and everybody knows they're watching out for each other. It is amazing the power in that.
One of the problems we've got today is, and because the police did try to do a little bit of everything for everybody, and they did have crime prevention groups within the police departments. They had coordinators, and now with the budget cuts, a lot of these programs will disappear, and it's going to be up to neighbors to take much more responsibility for their own neighborhood safety. So this is a good time to get your neighbors together, have a social, make it fun. This doesn't have to be horrible work. Just have a good time getting neighbors together. Not everybody's going to like all the neighbors, and a lot of people may not come. Don't worry about it. Start small, and over the years, you will build your neighborhood group.
The interesting thing is that you don't need every neighbor.
That's
just
right.
Need a significant amount that they know somebody's watching.
Absolutely. And you know, a lot of people say, oh, but everybody's working, or nobody's home. You'd be surprised how many people are home on the computer, and how many people have a cottage industry going on in their own home. You won't know what's going on and who's home unless you find out and ask. And then you've got a tremendous amount of skills that people can share in the neighborhood that you don't even know about. So go out and meet those people, and you're going to be surprised at who's actually there and who can really contribute to that neighborhood support.
People are amazed if they really knew how few people are causing all the trouble. So tell us what that statistic is.
Well, for example, in a major city like Oakland, California, it's 5 or 7% of the people at the most that are creating the problems. Most of our children are very responsible. Most of our adults are very responsible. But what happens is the media focuses on the bad situations that are that continue to people tolerate, so that it makes it look like the whole city has a problem. And basically, when people come together, They are going to put a squash on that whole situation, and they're going to take back their own neighborhoods. They're going to supply those kids with much more to do than just tear up the neighborhood, be graffiti artists, vandalize, set fires. Kids need recreation. They need, and it takes people to do that. I mean, you can start a group in your own neighborhood, jump roping contests, have a block party. You have more power than you think. Just go out and do it.
That's right. And if the 95% say we're not going to tolerate it, it will start to shrink.
Well, it definitely will start to shrink. The problem exists because people have allowed it to go on so long, and if you don't stop it, it keeps growing. This doesn't disappear by itself. People have to make a conscious decision to say, we've had enough, and we're going to change it.
Well, Stephanie Mann, you may not know it, but you are a hero. You have made a remarkable difference in many lives. We're very proud to know you, to be affiliated with you, and to carry this program to the public that they may understand what their rights are and what they can do about it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca. I appreciate it. And anybody can find out more information by going to www.safekidsnow.com.
Thank you.